stars in my eyes. My rock's sweeter, meet the one I love. I don't know how, don't know why. I've been toasting all my life. Oh, it's sweeter. I've been toasting all my life.
Welcome to Phillip Island, Victoria in Australia. What a setting we have for this great sporting contest, the Little Penguin Sea to Dune race. Nervous moments always as they gather on the beach, the tension mounting, and away they go. There's the defending champion, wearing his familiar navy blue and white, great waddling style. Another pre-race favourite though, losing touch with the pack. Maybe that's why. A few too many fish in the day's feeding. There's a familiar face, Skip McIntyre, 8 times a champion back in the 90s, a very successful coach now, keeping a keen eye on proceedings. This the leading group, 1 or 2 still able to put on a show for the camera, others just ploughing straight over it. Some resorting to shortcuts. Sad that cheating has crept into this beautiful sport. The judges will have a look at that. But up at the front, the pace is relentless, closing in on those sand dunes that will offer a bed for the night. The fatigue starting to tell. Who's got the finishing kick up on the outside? What a turn of pace from that one, whichever one it is. No answer from the rest, and he takes victory. What a win. There we are, into the Burrow, building an extension with his winnings, and back tomorrow to try and defend his title here on Phillip Island.
Good evening, everyone, and good morning to our viewers in the UK, and welcome to Live Penguin TV. My name's Megan, and I'm going to be your host tonight as we watch the world's smallest species of penguin, our little penguin, coming out of the water, crossing the beach and heading back to their burrows here on Phillip Island in Victoria, Australia. And tonight I'm joined by Ranger T. Come on in, tell us what you're going to be doing tonight.
Hi everybody, my name's Ranger T, so I'll be checking all the questions on Facebook and YouTube, and if you've got any really interesting questions, please put them in and we'll try and answer them on air. And have a fabulous night everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you T. So as Trey said, send through all of your questions on Facebook and YouTube. We will do our best to answer some live on the air. Don't pick the hard ones, Therese. No, do your worst. I'll try and answer any questions that you might throw at me. And we will also have a ranger going through the questions on Facebook and getting back to as many of you as possible with all of our penguin-y information. We'll do our best. Now, as I mentioned, we are joining you from Phillip Island, and this area is also known as Millau, and that is a traditional name given by the Bunurong, and they were the first people here on Millau, and they've been coming here for thousands of years. They would have been the first people coming here and seeing these penguins coming out of the water, and I would like to acknowledge them and their elders past, present and emerging as the traditional custodians of the land that we're joining you from. And I'd like to also acknowledge any traditional custodians that might be joining us virtually or here in person, and acknowledge the lands that any of you might be joining us from. And if you do know whose lands you are on this evening or this morning, let us know. Pop it in the comments. Let us know where you're watching our beautiful little penguins from, and if you can, pop in an acknowledgement for your traditional custodians. Now, we do already have some penguins that have crossed the beach, as I'm sure you may have noticed. So we have started tonight's stream a little bit earlier than the last few nights because the penguins have been coming in earlier, especially tonight. It's a bit dark, it's a bit stormy. And what are these guys doing? They're meant to be coming across the beach, not going back to the water. This isn't a typical penguin parade. What are you guys doing? As you can see tonight, crossing the beach, heading back to their burrows, we call it their dangerous dash because it is the most scary, the most dangerous part of the penguin's day. And that's why these guys are running back in the water, because something's given them a fright. Even though they made it all the way across the beach, they should have been safe. They've gotten spooked by something and they've run back in the water. And in the water is where they spend about 80% of their time. That's what they're really good at. That's where they're really safe from predators. They're really fast. They're really well camouflaged. But as you can see, as soon as they pop up out of the water onto the beach here, they're quite conspicuous. They're easier to see for predators. So they're a little bit more nervous. And there's more penguins running back. What are you guys doing? I can't see what's frightening them. But this group crossing right now, they don't seem too bothered because they have a nice group, a few friends to cross with. So that helps them feel a little bit safer. So these penguins would have been out at sea all day. They might have been out for a few days. They might have even been out for a few weeks. And a couple of hours before it got dark, before the sun went down, they came up to shore and they started forming groups out in the water, groups that we call rafts. So on a clear night, and it's not quite so stormy, you might be able to see those rafts swimming in. They look like a black line on the surface, and they make what we call a hucking noise. So you might have already seen some people in the comments greeting each other with a huck. And if you haven't watched our live stream before, you might be wondering what these people were on about. That's the noise that the penguins use to greet each other, to form those groups. They'll go huck, 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 huck. T, you meant to join me. That's better. There you go, we're forming a raft. So that's the noise they make out in the water, forming these groups and coming in a group for safety in numbers. And what they're worried about, what might be frightening them back in the water, is birds of prey. So because these penguins are so little, they are the smallest of all 18 species of penguin, they are worried about those big birds flying overhead that might try and make a penguin into a snack. So they wait till it's dark because that's when it's too dark for those birds of prey to see, to hunt, and that's when they're safest across the beach. And these guys look like they're finally gonna cross. Oh, there's quite a few more that's joined them. I'll try and get these guys in focus. Come on. There we go. And this is a nice big group. We call them a raft in the water once they come up onto land. You can call them a group, or we like to call them a waddle of penguins. It's a nice big waddle. And right now we do have Ranger Ebony counting these penguins as they're crossing the beach. So if you want to try your hand at penguin counting, give it a go. It's not an easy night to count tonight because we do have quite a high tide, which means there's not much beach for the penguins to cross. And we have a lot of penguins running back, which doesn't make it easy. We usually wait till they get more than halfway across because that's when we're confident they're not going to run back in the water, but they're proving that theory wrong tonight. And we might have even just gotten a number from Ebony. Did we, T?
We sure did. So that first massive group was 255.
Whoa! I did not think it was that many penguins. There you go. This is why they don't let me count the penguins. 255 in that first group. That is massive. A nice big group of penguins to start off our night. And if that is anything to go by, I think we're going to have more penguins than last night. So if you did watch last night, I hope you've all got your guesses in as to how many penguins you think came in. T, how many did we have last night?
We had 1,162, so 1162.
1,162 penguins, everybody. Whoever got the closest, give yourself a prize. At the staff here at the Penguin Parade, win a chocolate if we guess the closest. Maybe you just get bragging rights at home. Up to you. We like to make a little game of our penguin lotto, as we call it, our penguin counting. Although if the penguin counter wins, then it is a little bit suspicious. Oh, we have some penguins on the highway. Now let me try and keep up with these little guys. They can be so quick walking along this little penguin highway that we have here for them. And as we're seeing them go along the highway, keep your eyes peeled for any really fat, chunky penguins. That's what we've been seeing a lot of lately because we are nearing the end of our penguin breeding season. We do still have quite a few penguin chicks around, so keep an eye out for some brown, fluffy penguins, or probably penguins with their last little bit of brown fluff, getting their adult feathers, getting ready to head out to sea. But those penguins that have finished breeding, they're getting ready for their annual molt. So our penguins have very special waterproof feathers that allow them to stay out in the water for weeks or months at a time. So they have to maintain the waterproofness or the waterproofing of those feathers. So to do that, they have to molt every year. They have to lose and replace all of those feathers, and they can't do that while they're swimming around in the water because that would mean they're not waterproof. So they have to come onto land and undergo what we call a catastrophic molt. So they have to be here for about 2 to 3 weeks, losing and replacing all of their feathers. So if you're not eating for 2 to 3 weeks, you got to put on a bit of weight beforehand. So that's what these penguins are doing. A lot of them looking really big, really chunky because they have to more than double their body weight to survive that molt, to spend that time on land. So let's zoom in and see if we can spot any really fat penguins. And I probably shouldn't say fat, that's why I keep saying chunky, because they aren't fat, they're actually little penguin bodybuilders. They put on all that weight in muscle that they'll then metabolize over their time on land while they're molting. And I think that molting is probably my favorite time of year, especially when we do still have a few little chicks running around, and the molting penguins, they're just so fat, they're grumpy, their feathers are falling out, so they're itchy, they're hot. They don't want to be here. They want to be out at sea having a all-you-can-eat fish buffet. But they're stuck here molting. Oh, here we go. There's some more coming past on the highway. Keep your eye out for those chunkers, those bodybuilding penguins getting ready to molt. I haven't seen any extra large penguins yet. Sometimes they're so fat that they can barely stand upright. Sometimes they're just pulling themselves along on their belly, using their feet and their flippers to move. I haven't seen any like that yet tonight. A lot of these penguins that might look skinny are actually a normal size. Their normal weight is about 1 kilo. So if they look skinny, they probably have some hungry chicks that they're trying to look after and bringing back food to. And T, do you have a question?
I have got a question from Alexandra. She wants to know, is there a leader to the raft or the wattle that's coming home?
Ooh, thank you for that question. So there's good timing because there's another raft / wattle that's just arrived. They're doing a bit of both at the moment. I believe someone called that once a roddle when they're half in the water, half on land. And no, they don't really have any leader. So it just takes a few brave penguins to come out and start walking out or go, okay, great, we're all walking, kind of like sheep. They all just go together. But then if a few penguins get a fright and run back, most of them will run back. Half of them might run back. So they just it's kind of just following the herd. They kind of have a herd mentality when they're in these groups. And each group is always different. So they're not going to find the same group each night. They're not going to come in each night. It's kind of like people catching the train home from work at the end of the day. They're just penguins that want to come back to a similar place at a similar time. They've been out at work, fishing, bringing back the groceries, and they're just catching the train, hopping aboard the raft, and then coming in and getting off at their own little stops depending on where they live. So they're all just traveling together for convenience. Some of them might know each other, but most of them will probably be strangers. But they are a little bit more sociable than people on the train. So they do like to have a bit of a chat, a bit of a socialise, and what you can see a lot of them doing once they get up on the rocks, they feel safe, they take a bit of a break, and they'll preen. So I know some of our rangers like to call this the salon or the resting rocks. It has a few names, but they're all making themselves look good. They have a lot of people to walk past here at the Penguin Parade, and they also might be heading home to see their partners. So they're going to realign their feathers, get out any ocean gunk, make sure they're nice and waterproof, and they'll use the opportunity while they're in their group to help some other penguins preen each other. A bit of, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Preen their face, the back of their head, the places they can't get to themselves. Do you have another question, T?
Oh, I've got another question from
They're coming through thick and fast tonight.
Miss Rabbit. How long do they live for?
How long do they live for? That's one we get asked quite a lot. And the average age is only about 7, which doesn't sound like much. And it's not, because there is quite a high mortality in their first year. It's really hard for a young penguin when they head out to sea for the first time. They have to learn to find food. Nobody teaches them how to be a penguin. But once they figure all of that out, once they get really good at finding food, and they get past those first rough couple of years, they'll usually live into their teens. And the oldest penguin we had here lived to be almost 26 years old, which is pretty impressive. So I'm only a little bit older than that oldest penguin, which is bizarre to think of. And that penguin kept breeding right up until it was last seen. And you might be wondering, how do we know how old our oldest penguin was? And that's because we do a lot of research here at Phillip Island Nature Park. So we're a self-funded non-for-profit conservation organisation. So we're not just all about coming and watching the penguins and seeing the joyous thing that is them crossing the beach. We also want to know everything we can about them. So if you do come here to the Penguin Parade or any of our other sites, because we do manage about 20% of Phillip Island, we look after the Koala Reserve, Churchill Island, the Nobby Centre, many of our beautiful beaches, wetlands and woodlands all around Phillip Island. So if you come to any of those areas and you buy a ticket, that money actually goes straight back into conservation research and education. Going back into learning about our penguins, so we can give you these really interesting facts, so we can know what's going on and we can know the threats that they face and we can help protect them. So that's something really fantastic that we're able to do with the funds that come from our tourism here on Phillip Island. And that research feeds right back into conservation. And if you can't come and visit us to help contribute to that work that we do, you can donate to the Penguin Foundation. You can adopt a penguin, you can adopt a shearwater, you can adopt a bandicoot, all of the wonderful animals that we have here on Phillip Island. You can help contribute to their conservation. And we do hope to see as many people back here at the Penguin Parade as soon as possible, when we're all allowed to travel again. But we are loving having people back here to see our wonderful little penguins. And we do tell our penguins apart through our research, through a little something called a microchip, which you would be familiar with if you have a pet cat or a dog. It's just a little electronic chip that goes beneath the skin in the penguins in the back of their neck, so that we can actually scan a penguin and we know exactly who that penguin is. So we don't give them names, but they'll have a number, something like 7BA312C. That's about right. And that'll tell us who that penguin is. So that's how we know how the oldest penguin is, because it would have been microchipped and it would have been in one of our research areas. And if I scroll my camera over, there's a lot more penguins here. And let's have a bit of a look in the colony. There's a couple of geese, some Cape Barren geese, and we'll come back to those because I wanted to show you some of our research burrows and we might see if there's any chicks at home. There's a little fluff ball. So this little fluffy chick right here, oh, he's much fluffier than I would expect for this time of year. This little guy is probably about 5 to 6 weeks old because he's just started to lose the fluff on his flippers. He's mostly a brown fluff ball, and he lives in one of our research burrows. So it's a bit hard to see, but this box actually has a number on it, and these burrows get checked once every 2 weeks. So our researchers will come out, lift up the lid, see who's inside, scan them, and we know exactly who that penguin is. And we can look back in our database and we can see who's been home, when they were first tagged. If they were tagged as a chick, we'll even know how old that penguin was. And these 2 burrows that we're looking at on the left of the screen here are actually quite interesting. So I was working with our research team and I was out checking these burrows one day, and there was 2 chicks in that burrow on the right. And this adult penguin had decided to come home. And the chicks were old enough, they were left home alone. Mum and Dad had headed out to sea. And this imposter penguin came into this burrow, and he decided that it was his burrow and that those chicks didn't belong. He tried to kick them out. They ended up huddled in between the 2 boxes. It was a little bit sad. They did manage to get back in their box, so no need to worry. But when we scanned that penguin to see who he was and what he was doing, he was born in that burrow right next door. 3 years ago, he hatched in there, he fledged, and he came back 3 years later. He's like, I was born here, this is my burrow, go away. And the parents, I'm sure, came back and kicked him out, but they are incredible little birds and they have an incredible memory. So this little chick here, he'll probably have another 2 or 3 weeks on land, losing the last of his baby fluff. And when he comes back, he'll come back after about a year out at sea, which is incredible. They spend their whole first year out at sea learning to be a penguin. And then another 2 years, probably 1 to 2 years, he'll come back to breed, and he'll find a burrow within about 45-50 meters of where he was born here. So they have an incredible memory, an incredible sense of direction, our little penguins. And so they do get a little bit distressed, as some of you might have seen, when there are impediments on their pathway. The geese have moved, luckily. We do occasionally, we did have a live penguin TV where a goose decided to stand in the middle of the pathway, and the penguins couldn't get past the goose, but they've moved out of the way now, so I think we're all good. The penguins can get past. And do we have another question?
Oh, we do have another question from Kira. She would like to know, do the parents tag team when they're looking after chicks?
Thank you for that one, Kira. So they certainly do. Penguin parenting in little penguins, it isn't one-sided like you might know with some of the bigger species of penguin, like the emperor penguins, where the male will look after the egg while the female's out fishing. Our little penguins, they don't live so far from their food source, so they'll take it in turns sitting on their eggs and looking after the chicks. So they will take it in turns incubating, so one parent will sit on their eggs for a few days, sometimes up to a week, while their partner's out fishing. Then when they come back, they'll swap over until the eggs hatch, and then when the chicks are about 2 to 4 weeks old, for that few weeks, they'll still continue tag teaming, but they'll swap over every day. So it's a lot of hard work, but those teeny tiny chicks, they need to be given constant food and they need to be kept warm. So a parent needs to be with them, but they always need to have food. So it's really hard work for those parents during what we call that guard stage, when the chicks are quite young, swapping over every day. And then when they reach 2 to 4 weeks old, more than 2 to 4 weeks old, that's when they enter what we call post-guard. So that's when they are old enough to be left home alone, and that's those curious little chicks you'll see outside the burrows running around looking for mum and dad. And mum and dad will be coming back as often as they can. It might be every day, it might be every 2, 3, 4 days. Mum and dad might not even see each other on their trips. They'll just be going out, finding as much food as they can, eating a little bit for themselves, but then bringing back about a quarter of their body weight to feed those chicks. And our researchers have estimated that it takes about 14 kilograms of fish to raise one chick to fledging. So it is really hard work to be a penguin parent. And it is amazing how they work out when they're swapping over. They have to be really mindful that their partner is on the nest waiting for them to come home. And something that I saw recently when I was doing some burrow checks for research, I was monitoring penguin nest attendance and when they were swapping over to try and figure out when a penguin was going to go out to sea, because I wanted to put a tracker on it to see where it was going. So I was monitoring our penguin weighbridge where they cross, and it scans their microchips so we know who comes in. And I saw that the penguin that who I wanted to put the tracker on, its partner had come in. So I'm like, great, that means that the penguin has left. I put the tracker on it, it's gone. And when I went to check on the burrow, the penguin with the tracker was still there. I'm like, what's going on? Your partner has come home. Why didn't you leave? So I asked our marine scientist Andre about it. He's like, oh yeah, sometimes they just come to check in and then they'll go back out. So this female, her partner had come in. He's like, hey honey, how you doing? You all get in here. Keeping the eggs nice and warm. She's like, yep, all good, you go back out. And he went back out to sea, which I just thought was adorable. You think it would make sense he would stay because he's already there, but no. She was happy sitting on the eggs, so he went back out to sea. Oh, we have another question?
We do have another question
tonight. Loving it.
in relation to penguins being out at sea for a long time. When they get tired, do they go? Ted Bear wants to know: do they go ashore anywhere, or what happens?
Ah, yes. Ted Bear, where do they sleep? Very good question. So penguins don't need to come onto land unless they are breeding or molting. So they'll quite happily sleep out at sea. They don't have to come onto land. And in that first year of life, they pretty much don't. It kind of depends on where they live and how close the food is, but when they're learning to fish, they'll spend all their time out at sea. And they will sleep floating on the surface. So a little penguin doesn't need to sleep 8 hours like we do. They're not coming onto land tonight to sleep. They only need to sleep for about 4 minutes at a time. A little penguin power nap. But that is a full sleep cycle for a penguin. So whether they are floating on the surface of the water, or they're back at their burrows, or they're walking along the highway like these guys here, if they get tired, they'll just lie down, or they might just stay standing up if they're on land, and they'll have a little snooze. So it's quite handy. I wish I could do that. Just have a little 4-minute rest and you're ready to keep going. But they're quite interesting in their habits, because little penguins, they're not nocturnal, they're not diurnal, they're not completely active at night or during the day. They're something that we call, it's a fancy word called polyphasic, which means that they kind of switch it up a bit depending on where they are and what they're doing. So when they're in the water, they're most active during the day because they need sunlight to fish. They need to be able to see under the water to find their food. So they're fishing all day using the light to help them dive down as deep as possible. But when they come onto land, they can't be active during the day because that's when there's predators around. So they have to stay in their burrow. So when they're on land, they're most active at night. So they switch it up a bit depending on what they're doing, and they'll spend most of their night once they're on land socializing because they don't fish with other penguins. They're quite solitary when they're out at sea usually. So when they come back, they love to socialize. So if you do come to the penguin parade, it's not just incredible seeing the little penguins like we're doing tonight. You also hear them, and they will make so many different noises that you didn't think was possible out of such a little bird. They're very noisy. They make the huck that we described earlier. They do a bit of a braying call, a bit like a bit of a pet. Yeah, I walked past a penguin in its burrow today and it did that to me. I think it was a bit annoyed. It was a molting penguin. He's like, what are you doing? Go away.
And then you've got the I love you call.
Oh, what's that one too? Oh, I didn't know that one. See, I don't speak fluent penguin. I know a few phrases, but I'm always learning, trying to figure out what they're saying. But I think one of my favorites is the little chicks when they're just running around. They're going. They're pretty much saying, "Are you my mum and dad? Do you have some food? I'm really, really hungry." And I think it's so funny because they don't know who their mum and dad is. They just run up to every penguin that walks past, seeing if they have some food for them. I just want to see what this penguin's doing here. No, nothing interesting. And not just other penguins. I saw 2 little penguin chicks one night run up to a wallaby asking for food. The wallaby gave them a bit of a bite on the head and it was like, nah, not feeding you. seen them run up to a bandicoot asking for food. I think the bandicoot was quite frightened. It's like, no. And they're like, are you trying to eat me? I don't know what's going on. And last night, actually, T and I were out in our penguin colony doing a bit of penguin monitoring, and 2 little chicks, they kind of started to run towards us, and we thought they were going to ask us for food. Sorry guys, I don't have any fish for you. And even if I did, it's not so pretty the way that penguin parents feed their chicks. They do regurgitate it, so it's pretty much a vomit of fish straight into their babies' mouths. But it's not as gross as I make it sound, because as one of our researchers, Andre, he likes to say penguins are walking fridges when they have chicks. They kind of look a little bit like it when they're getting ready to molt, but when they have chicks, they change the acidity of their stomach so that they don't digest the fish too much before they bring it back to their chicks. So it's not partially digested, mushy, gross fish. It's pretty solid whole fish that they're bringing back. Is that another question?
No. 3 minutes left.
3 minutes left. Oh my goodness, this always goes so fast. Time flies when you're watching penguins, and I must say that I certainly never ever get sick of it. They are such beautiful little birds, and there's plenty coming in tonight. So if you've tried your hand at penguin counting, maybe put in the comments how many you think have come in tonight. I think it's going to be more than last night, but that's just my guess. I haven't been trying to count. I've been too busy yapping away talking about penguins, as I do probably every night. So let us know how many penguins you think came in tonight. It looks like a lot. And if we haven't answered your question tonight, keep watching, keep asking those questions. We can't tell you everything that we know about penguins in one night. I know I could talk about penguins for hours without running out of things to talk about. So
Me too.
Keep sending, we all know a lot about penguins. So send in your questions night after night. Keep tuning into Live Penguin TV. I must say, each night is different with these little guys. They always are doing different behaviours. Everything's changing depending on the time of the year. Sometimes we get special guest stars like the geese, wallabies, bandicoots, Ricali, all kinds of other critters joining us, and sometimes we get special human guests as well, which I know I've really enjoyed watching over the last week. And remember, if you want to help look after our beautiful wildlife here on Phillip Island, we do want to see you guys here. Come visit us if you can or when you can. And if you can't, you can help us out by donating to the Penguin Foundation. You can jump onto our website. We have merchandise and lots of information as well. So if you think that Live Penguin TV is just touching the surface, or there's another animal you want to know more about, we have lots and lots of information on our website as well. And our research is always continuing. So if you ask us something and we don't know the answer, we'll take it to the researchers. We'll ask them. And if they don't know, maybe we'll try and find out. So we're really loving all of your questions and queries and all of the support that you guys have been giving us by watching Live Penguin TV. We love hearing from you all. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Hope you've all enjoyed watching our beautiful little penguins, many little penguins tonight. And we hope to see you on Live Penguin TV again tomorrow night. So I think Trace, will we leave them with a hug?
I think we should.
Yes? Alrighty. Bye everybody.
Bye.